The wealthiest investor on earth lives in the same house he bought in 1958. He drives a normal car. He eats McDonald's for breakfast. And when thousands of people line up every year to ask him the secret to building billions, he tells them something they never want to hear. The most important financial decision you'll ever make has nothing to do with stocks. It's who you marry. Most people think that's romantic advice. It's not. It's cold mathematics. Because while everyone's obsessing over portfolio optimization and market timing, they're completely ignoring a massive structural crack in the foundation of their entire life. A crack that will either multiply everything they build or silently drain it all away. Let me show you what no one talks about. When you walk into a financial advisor's office, they'll analyze your risk tolerance, your asset allocation, your diversification strategy. They'll spend hours optimizing your returns by 2 or 3%. But here's what they won't tell you. That entire conversation is irrelevant if you go home to the wrong person every night. The real wealth equation doesn't happen between market open and market close. It happens in the hours after you leave the office. Think about buying a terrible stock. Worst case scenario? It goes to zero. You lose everything you invested. It's painful, absolutely. But your loss is capped at 100%. You can recover. You can earn more money. You can rebuild. A bad marriage operates under completely different rules. When you choose the wrong life partner, you're not buying a stock that might go to zero. You're signing an unlimited liability contract. There's no cap on the downside. The wrong person can destroy your bank account, wreck your physical health, alienate you from your children, and push you toward complete psychological collapse. I've watched brilliant minds on Wall Street, people with exceptional intelligence and massive fortunes, get completely dismantled by a toxic marriage. Their IQ couldn't save them. Their wealth couldn't protect them. They brought a black hole into their daily existence, and it consumed everything. But the opposite scenario is equally powerful. Choose the right partner, and you've just acquired the ultimate competitive advantage. You've installed a permanent fortress around your mind. Today we're stripping away all the romantic nonsense. We're examining marriage through the lens of a value investor. Because if you get this one decision right, you can make 1,000 career mistakes and still end up wealthy and content. Get it wrong, and no amount of financial brilliance will save you. Most people radically misunderstand the cost of a bad marriage. They think it's the divorce settlement, the 50% asset split, the lawyer fees, the alimony payments. That's not even close to the real damage. The real cost isn't calculated when the marriage ends. It's an invisible tax you pay every single day while you're still together. Your most valuable asset isn't money. It's cognitive bandwidth. It's your ability to think clearly, assess risk accurately, and make rational decisions under pressure. Every morning you wake up with a limited supply of mental energy. If you spend 8 hours fighting market forces, then come home to a war zone, you're in serious trouble. If walking through your front door means dealing with constant arguments, emotional manipulation, passive aggression, or manufactured drama, your mental battery hits zero. You never recharge. You're living on eggshells in your own house. I've seen traders lose millions in a single afternoon. When you dig into why they made such catastrophic errors, it's rarely because they forgot how to read financials. It wasn't a failure of their models. It was because they had a screaming fight with their spouse the night before. They walked into the office emotionally compromised, exhausted, angry, desperate for a quick win to feel powerful again. They imported their domestic chaos directly into the markets. Here's what you need to understand about markets. They have zero mercy for your emotional turmoil. The market is a ruthless machine. It will take every dollar you have and hand it to someone who slept peacefully the previous night. When you choose a toxic partner, you're fighting a two-front war. You're battling the global economy during the day and your spouse at night. No one survives that indefinitely. Eventually, your health deteriorates. Your judgment collapses. You start taking reckless risks just to feel a momentary surge of control. Your empire crumbles. A professional boxer wouldn't step into the ring with a broken ankle. Doesn't matter how strong his upper body is, he's getting knocked out. A toxic marriage is the broken ankle of business. You're entering the most competitive arena on the planet, trying to defeat the smartest people alive. But you're crippled from the inside. Now consider the hidden cost, the cost of lost compounding. Every hour spent arguing about meaningless domestic issues is an hour you could have spent reading annual reports. Every ounce of relationship anxiety is an ounce of focus stolen from your long-term strategy. When you multiply that daily theft across 10, 20, 30 years, the compounding negative effect is staggering. You don't just lose half your assets in a divorce. You lose the entire empire you never built because your engine was constantly starved of fuel. You operate at 20% capacity your whole life. You cannot build a financial fortress on a crumbling emotional foundation. Physics doesn't allow it. So when you're evaluating a potential partner, look past the surface attraction. Ask yourself one brutally analytical question. Is this person a battery that recharges my cognitive bandwidth, or are they a black hole that drains it? If you suspect they're a black hole, you need to walk away immediately. Doesn't matter how painful it feels right now. Your long-term survival depends on it. Let's examine another dimension of this transaction, something I call the defense of the inner scorecard. Watch what happens to men who make decent money in their 30s and 40s. They immediately experience lifestyle inflation. They buy houses far too large. They purchase luxury cars they can't truly afford. They send kids to absurdly expensive private schools. Why? In most cases, they're not doing it for themselves. They're doing it because they married someone who operates entirely on external validation. Someone who's terrified of what the neighbors think. When your partner is obsessed with social status, you've signed up for financial slavery. You'll be forced to take massive, unnecessary risks just to fund vanity. You'll work a job you despise, paying the mortgage on a mansion that exists solely to impress strangers. This is how brilliant men go bankrupt. They let external pressure from a vain partner dictate their capital allocation. In the modern era, this danger is multiplied exponentially. We live in a world dominated by social media. Your partner is constantly exposed to images of fabricated wealth, luxury vacations, and perfectly curated existences. If she's weak, she'll absorb that poison. She'll import that toxicity into your home. She'll look at you and demand to know why you're not providing that same fantasy. When you're forced to provide a fantasy, you become a fraud. You start cutting corners. You take on crushing debt. You become fragile. And in financial markets, fragile things always get destroyed. My partner and I have always operated on what we call an inner scorecard. We hold ourselves to a standard that has nothing to do with external applause. But here's the secret nobody discusses. It's nearly impossible to maintain an inner scorecard if you share your life with someone who worships external validation. If you come home every night to someone complaining that your car is outdated or your vacation wasn't luxurious enough, that toxic energy will eventually erode your discipline. You'll break. You'll compromise your long-term compounding strategy just to purchase a few days of domestic peace. Now, consider the opposite scenario. I still live in the same house I bought decades ago. I drive normal, unremarkable cars. I eat inexpensive breakfasts. People constantly ask how I maintain this level of frugality when I have billions. They think I possess superhuman willpower. They're wrong. The real reason I can live this way is because of who I chose to marry. My wife never cared about the size of houses, country club memberships, or expensive jewelry. She was completely immune to the disease of social comparison. Because she was immune, I was immune. She was the ultimate defender of my inner scorecard. When you have a partner who doesn't demand a luxurious lifestyle, you possess a massive advantage over competitors. You have the ultimate financial weapon, staying power. You don't have to chase terrible, high-risk investments for quick profits. You can hold your cash. You can wait patiently for the perfect opportunity, because there's no one at home demanding you buy a new boat. A partner content with simplicity isn't just a good person. They're a literal mathematical force multiplier for your wealth. They allow your capital to compound in absolute silence, uninterrupted by the desperate need to appear rich. If you want to know if you're dating the right person, perform a simple test. Tell them you're going to downsize your lifestyle. Tell them you're selling the nice car, moving into a smaller place, and investing every spare dollar into a business for the next 10 years. Watch their reaction closely. If they panic, if they look at you with disgust, if they start talking about what their friends will think, you must end the relationship immediately. You're looking at a financial liability. You're looking at someone who will eventually force you to trade your freedom for their ego. But if they look at you calmly and say they don't care where you live as long as you're building your future, you've found a unicorn. You've found someone who will protect your inner scorecard. You've found the foundation of a real empire. Let's examine another critical dimension, the margin of safety. My mentor taught me a simple rule. You must always build a massive margin of safety into every transaction. If you're driving a truck that weighs 10,000 pounds, you don't drive it over a bridge designed to hold exactly 10,000 pounds. That's catastrophic risk. You build a bridge that can hold 30,000 pounds. You prepare for the worst-case scenario. This principle applies ruthlessly to who you marry. Most men test their relationships during bull markets. They evaluate their partner when business is booming, when markets are hitting record highs, when their bank account overflows. It's easy to have a peaceful, loving, supportive relationship when the economy is showering you with money. Everyone's happy when numbers go up. But that's not a real test. That's an illusion. The true test of a partner happens during a terrifying economic collapse. Think about the financial crisis. Think about dot-com crashes. Think about your own startup suddenly running out of cash and facing bankruptcy, when your net worth drops 50% in a single month. When financial news anchors are screaming that the world is ending, the true psychological nature of your partner will be entirely exposed. If you chose the wrong person, someone who relies on external validation and material comfort, they'll break under pressure. They'll look at the collapsing portfolio and panic. They'll blame you. They'll scream at you to sell every asset at the absolute bottom, forcing you to lock in permanent ruin. They'll take an external economic crisis and weaponize it into an internal emotional war. When you have a fragile partner during a market crash, you're mathematically guaranteed to make fatal decisions. You cannot execute a brilliant, contrarian, long-term strategy when your spouse is threatening to leave because your stock price temporarily dropped. Now look at the opposite scenario, the ultimate margin of safety. When the market is crashing, when there's blood in the streets, when all your competitors are jumping out of windows, the right partner does not panic. They don't care about the temporary, meaningless fluctuation of your net worth. They look at you, pour you coffee, and tell you this is just a normal economic cycle. They tell you they believe in your judgment, that the sky is not falling. That single moment of unshakable domestic loyalty is worth more than $1 billion in cash. When your partner completely removes domestic pressure, something magical happens to your brain. Your cognitive bandwidth is entirely freed up. You're no longer acting out of fear or desperation. You can look at the collapsing market with terrifying clarity. This is the exact psychological state that allows you to be greedy when everyone else is fearful. You can only deploy capital and buy undervalued assets during a massive panic if your own household is completely immune to that panic. If my partner had panicked every time the stock market went down 20%, my empire would not exist today. I would have been forced to sell my best investments just to calm her down. Her incredible emotional stability gave me the absolute freedom to hold my positions for decades, regardless of what the economic weather looked like. A great wife is the ultimate hedge against disaster. She's the deep concrete foundation that prevents your emotional house from collapsing during a financial hurricane. So when you're evaluating a potential life partner, don't look for someone who's simply fun to take on luxury vacations. Don't look for someone who only smiles when champagne is flowing. Look for someone you'd want to be trapped in a concrete bunker with during a global financial war. Look for someone who possesses extreme emotional stoicism. If a person cannot handle a delayed flight, a flat tire, or a minor restaurant inconvenience without throwing an emotional tantrum, they will absolutely destroy your life when a real economic crisis hits. Marry the person who is perfectly calm in the storm. Marry your ultimate margin of safety. Look at how the average successful man chooses his partner. His ego is fragile. He wants to feel powerful. So he looks for a woman who will constantly validate him. He looks for a cheerleader, someone who will nod her head, agree with every word, and treat him like a genius. In the corporate world, this is the exact equivalent of a CEO filling his board of directors with submissive, weak-minded yes men. It feels fantastic for your ego in the short term, but it's mathematically guaranteed to destroy your company in the long term. When you're completely surrounded by people who refuse to challenge you, you become blind to your own stupidity. You develop massive blind spots. You start believing your own delusions of grandeur. As you become more successful, a dangerous phenomenon occurs. The world stops telling you the truth. Your employees won't tell you when your ideas are terrible because they want to keep their jobs. Your brokers and financial advisors will agree with you because they want commission fees. You become completely isolated in an echo chamber of your own making. This is why you absolutely must have someone in your life who will tell you the truth. Someone who doesn't stroke your ego. Someone who is your ultimate truth teller. When you bring a terrible investment idea to them, they don't gently suggest you might be wrong. They look you dead in the eye and tell you it's the most stupid idea they've ever heard. They ruthlessly attack your logic. They point out every single flaw in your thinking. That brutal, unfiltered honesty saves you from making catastrophic mistakes worth billions. It's the most valuable asset you possess. When you choose a wife, you're selecting the vice chairman of your own life. You're choosing the most important member of your personal board of directors. If you choose a fragile flower who's too intimidated to disagree with you, you're walking straight into a financial minefield without a metal detector. You need a partner who possesses massive intellectual horsepower. You need a woman who is smart enough to immediately recognize when you're making a fatal error and brave enough to smash your ego to pieces before you can execute that error. Men, especially when they start making money, are highly susceptible to an insidious disease called hubris. You have one successful year in your business, or you pick one winning stock, and suddenly you think you're an invincible god of finance. Your testosterone completely overrides your rational thinking. A weak partner will watch you accelerate the car toward the edge of a cliff, and she'll say nothing because she's afraid of starting an argument. A great partner, a true equal, will grab the steering wheel and slam her foot on the brakes. She'll look at you coldly and tell you that you're letting your recent success completely cloud your judgment. She'll remind you of your core principles. She'll force you to sit down, run the numbers again, and strip away your emotional bias. This kind of relationship requires a massive amount of male security. A weak, insecure man simply cannot handle a brilliant, outspoken woman. A weak man is terrified of being challenged in his own home. He would rather be comfortable and bankrupt than challenged and wealthy. But a man who is actually destined to build a generational empire actively seeks out that intellectual friction. He craves it. He knows that a wife who constantly challenges his assumptions is literally saving him from his own worst enemy. And his own worst enemy is his own unchecked ego. So don't marry a fan. Don't marry a submissive cheerleader. Marry a woman who has the profound psychological strength to tell you exactly when you're being a complete fool. Marry your ultimate truth teller. Let's examine the final dimension, the 50-year horizon and the absolute rejection of short-term speculation. When an amateur investor enters the stock market, they're driven entirely by emotion. They look for the hot new technology company. They look for the stock that's skyrocketing on the front page of newspapers. They're chasing a temporary rush of dopamine. They want a massive return in 3 weeks. This is exactly how the average man chooses a wife. He's driven entirely by primitive biology. He looks for physical perfection. He looks for temporary passion. He's completely blinded by a chemical reaction in his brain. He's buying a highly speculative, incredibly risky asset based on absolute zero fundamental analysis. When you buy a company simply because the logo looks nice, you're guaranteed to lose all your money. When the initial excitement fades and the reality of a 30-year bear market sets in, that speculative investment will collapse. Physical beauty fades. Passion is temporary. Biological impulses are mathematically guaranteed to decline. If you build your entire life foundation on a temporary chemical reaction, your empire will crumble into dust. My partner and I don't buy companies for 3 weeks. We don't even buy them for 3 years. When we acquire a business, we look at the core fundamentals and we ask ourselves a simple question. Will this specific company still possess a massive, impenetrable competitive advantage 50 years from now? If we cannot clearly see the 50-year horizon, we simply don't make the investment. We walk away. You must apply this exact same cold, ruthless framework to your romantic life. You must perform a 50-year fundamental analysis on your potential partner. You're not looking for someone who is fun at a party on a Friday night. You're looking for a completely different set of metrics. You're looking for deep, unshakable character. You're looking for a person who possesses a massive psychological moat. How do you identify a psychological moat? You look at how they respond to severe adversity. You look at how they treat people who can do absolutely nothing for them. You look at their capacity for delayed gratification. A woman with a wide moat does not need constant entertainment. She does not require constant validation from external sources. She is what we call a low-maintenance, high-yield asset. Think about the greatest businesses in the world. The greatest businesses don't require the CEO to constantly intervene and fix problems every single day. They operate beautifully on their own. They quietly generate massive amounts of free cash flow year after year, decade after decade. A truly great partner operates on the exact same principle. A great partner does not drain your energy with constant manufactured drama. She manages her own emotions. She solves complex problems independently. She quietly, consistently generates a massive surplus of peace, stability, and emotional capital. You never have to wake up and wonder if the foundation is cracking. You can dedicate 100% of your cognitive focus to building your empire because your domestic foundation is made of solid steel. When you find a partner with these incredibly rare fundamentals, the compounding effect over 50 years is almost impossible to comprehend. Imagine waking up every single morning for half a century next to a person who is fundamentally decent, intensely loyal, and intellectually brilliant. Every single day, she adds a tiny fraction of a percent to your overall well-being. In the first year, you might not notice the massive difference, but over 20, 30, or 50 years, that tiny daily advantage compounds into an absolute mountain of wealth and happiness. This is what I call the ultimate rocking chair test. Imagine you're 90 years old, sitting in a rocking chair on your front porch. You have zero energy left to fight the world. Your physical beauty is completely gone. Your bank account no longer brings you any thrill. The only thing that will matter in that exact moment is the character of the person sitting in the rocking chair next to you. If you chose a speculative stock based on temporary excitement, you will spend your final years in absolute misery. But if you chose a fundamentally sound partner with a massive psychological moat, you will die as the richest man on earth. Stop speculating. Stop trading on emotion. Look for the 50-year horizon. Tomorrow morning when you wake up, don't immediately check the financial news. Don't look at stock charts. Don't obsess over your portfolio. Look at the person sitting across from you at the breakfast table. Look at them with a cold, rational, and completely honest eye. Ask yourself if they are a fatal liability that is slowly draining your cognitive bandwidth, or if they are the ultimate compounding asset that will protect your empire for the next 50 years. Your honest answer to that single question will dictate your entire destiny.